Stormed to fame in 1979 with a hit single, Silly Games. She has been known as the Queen of Lovers Rock. This year celebrates her 40th anniversary in the music industry, and we are honoured to have her here with us. And she's going to be talking to me about the song that changed her life. Please give a huge welcome to Janet Kay.
Good evening, everybody.
So Janet, why don't you start by, why don't you tell us, to begin with, what song you've chosen?
The song that I've chosen tonight is a song by Minnie Riperton, Loving You, which was... I first heard the song in 1975 on Top of the Pops, and I did my own recording of that song, the first song I ever recorded, in 1977, hence my 40th anniversary, because it was 1977 that I started. Yeah.
We'll get on to the reasons why, because as we'll find out, it changed your life not once but twice.
Yeah.
But why don't we start by doing a little bit of explaining. I introduced you as the Queen of Lovers Rock,
Right.
But in case anyone in the audience doesn't quite know what Lovers Rock is, and not up to the speed with genres of reggae, why don't you give us your definition of what Lovers Rock is?
So my definition of Lovers Rock, as a youngster growing up, I was only exposed to the music that I heard on the radio, which was pop music. So it was the Beatles. I'm quite old. I've got any oldies in the house. Some of you won't even know who I'm talking about. But all these pop songs that I used to listen to as a child, and if you put that in a pot and mix it with the music that my parents came from the West Indies with, which was blue beat, reggae, ska, and you mix that all together, that is Lovers Rock. That is the music that came from us second generation blacks in the UK when we started making our music in the late 70s, mid to late 70s. And it coined the phrase Lovers Rock.
And so tell us, how did you first get into the music industry in the first place?
Well, I'd like to be able to tell you that I went to drama school and I had proper singing lessons. I went to Italian Conte or Corona, and I had dance classes and all those things, but actually, no, I didn't. I didn't do any of those things. All I had was a dream. I remember when I was 4 and 5, I had a little red chair that I used to put in front of the black and white TV. And I think it was Sunday evenings, they used to have a programme called the London Palladium. Anybody remember that? And they had all the live acts on there. And I would put that chair there and get excited because I wanted to see all these people singing. And so that, all I had really was a dream. And I came from a very strict background as well. I come from a family of Baptist deacons on my father's side. Although my dad broke the mould because he never went to church until it was time for him to get married and go to our christenings. I'm the eldest of 6 children. So I come from a very humble background, so the money wasn't there for me to do all the after-school extracurricular activities. When I was I just left school, I was in college, and a good friend of mine said to me, do you want to go to a rehearsal room and see the band Aswad rehearsing? And I said, oh wow, Aswad, yeah, I'd like to do that. So we trotted down to the Harrow Road. There was a music shop, record shop called Gangsterville. And at the back, I know, it's terrible. And at the back of the record shop, they had like a little room and it was all set up and it was a rehearsal space. And when we got there was nobody there yet, but all the mics were live. And I'd never really sung properly on a live mic other than in our makeshift studio that we had at school. So I went in and I was like, dum, dum, I was like, oh, that sounds nice. Anyway, Tony Gadd, who played keyboards for Aswad, came in and he overheard me messing about on the microphone. And he was good friends with Alton Ellis, who is a reggae legend, Jamaican reggae legend, now deceased. And he was good friends with him and they lived on the same road. And Alton was also, not only was he a singer, he was a producer as well. He was looking for a female artist to do a cover version of Loving You. So Tony said to him, well, I might have found the girl for you. I heard this girl singing in the rehearsal room. She's got quite a high voice. She might be able to do that song. So I got a letter from him, because we didn't have mobile phones back then, so the only way to do it. I don't even think we had a landline phone in our house at that time either, to be honest. And so I took this letter home that Alton Ellis had sent to me, asking me if I'd like to come to the studio and do this song. And I took it home and I said to my parents, could I go to the studio? Now, as I said to you, my parents were very strict and very protective of me. I was the eldest of 6, so the strictness was going to be more with me. You know, they were more lenient with my younger sister, but with me, it was serious. And so I went home and I said, can I go? And they said, no. We don't know this man. Who is he? He could be anybody. You're not going anywhere. So I was like, please. It's like, no. And I kept pleading and pleading for about a week. And then, you know, in the end, they said to me, right, you need to tell him to come to the house and ask your dad's permission if you can go. No, seriously. I mean, even if I wanted to go out for a date, I remember my first boyfriend was called Tony, and he had to come to my house, ask my dad's permission. My dad would look him up and down, ask him what his intentions were, told him what was allowed and what wasn't allowed, and that's how it went, right? So Alton came to the house in the living room that we weren't allowed to go into, right? Because the living room was a sacred place. And they had their conversation. I wasn't even allowed in the room, I don't think. And at the end of the conversation, they said, yes, you can go. That was the start of my career. I went to, we recorded the track at a studio in Chalk Farm in Camden. And I recorded that in March 1977. So that was my first recording. It was a weird experience, because I thought this studio was going to be really plush and lovely, but actually, and I got dressed up and everything. I got this new dress, this blue corduroy dress with a lovely belt, and I ended up having to sit on the floor in the corner, and while they were doing the track, I was eating a kebab, and that was the payment for that track. I didn't actually ever get any royalties for that. So, and then I went on to do a few other tracks after that until we get to 1979.
Yeah, so tell us about that. So the big hit you had.
Right, so that was in 1979. I was recording a track called I Do Love You. And Dennis Bovell, who was a member of the reggae band Matumbi, I don't know if anybody knows that band. Right. And he was the engineer for that recording, and he asked me if when the session's finished, would you like to listen to this song that I've written? I really think it would suit your voice. So at the end of the session, he sat with a guitar and he played it to me. And I said, yeah, it's all right. I don't want to do it, because I just wanted to sing. I just love singing. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I did that in 1979, July. And it sort of did the circuit in the community record shops, so to speak. In all the black record shops, it was #1 in all the reggae charts, along with all the other tracks that I'd done prior to that. About 3 or 4 that I'd done prior to that. They all went to #1 in the reggae charts. And later, after about 6 months, I'd gone on holiday with my school friend. It was like my first holiday. I got a call saying I had to come back. I was like, what do you mean I've got to come back? I've just got my first passport, my first holiday. You're telling me I've got to come back? Why? Because your tune is climbing up the charts and they need you to go on Top of the Pops. And I was like, what? Top of the Pops? I was a Top of the Pops fan. Back in the day, I used to buy this magazine called Disco 45 that had all the lyrics of all the songs that were in the top 20. And I'd sit there and I'd sing along to everything. And I was like, I'm actually going to be on that show that I watch every Thursday. This is unbelievable. But it was scary at the same time, because unlike people that had record deals maybe, that were groomed, that went to these drama schools and had singing lessons, I didn't have any of that. I didn't have any kind of grooming. I didn't know what to expect. Doing interviews, I didn't know how to present myself. It was kind of a scary time, but I just had to go with it. And when I watch it back now, I think I was so scared because I was actually cripplingly shy as a youngster. You know, singing that Loving You song in 1977 suited me very much because in my household, we were, you know, children were to be seen and not heard. So me belting out songs in the house wasn't allowed. You know, I sang very softly, so loving you was easy to sing, you know. Going on top of the Pops, when I look back and I see how I sang the high note, and it just sailed out of my mouth, and I looked so calm. I actually wasn't. I want you actually to go home and go on YouTube and look at my first Top of the Pops appearance. I was scared, and I sang it live because they asked me to mime, and I thought I can't mime. What is miming? I wouldn't know what to do. Suppose my mouth moves at the wrong time. I don't want to mime. I want to sing live, and I don't think that went down too well because they had to mic up, and you know they prefer you to just mime. But I did it live, and I surprised myself doing that performance.
Oh, we should have got that and played it for everyone. Next time, we'll put it on our Facebook or something.
That was my first ever live performance on TV, actually.
So you have this whirlwind introduction to the music industry. You're a big star. That continues for a few years. You move away from the music industry. You become you get a bit into acting a little bit.
Yeah, I got a bit disillusioned with the music industry, and I kind of gave it a rest for a little while. But then in 1980, I went on the set of a black movie called Babylon, and I met one of the stars, Victor Romero Evans. Now, I was in the record shop doing a signing, and Victor just walked into the record shop, and I thought, oh my God, I remember him from the movie. And I thought, I want to do some acting, but I don't know how to do it. Again, I kind of stumbled upon these things, but when there's a path set for you, it's just set for you, right? So I asked him, you know, how do I get into acting? I'd like to do acting. I've never been to drama school, but I would like to, you know, try and get into drama in some way. What should I do? So he said, well, funny you should ask that. I'm about to do a play. They're looking for somebody that can sing and act in this musical. So I said, oh, wow. So he said, well, give me your number and I will give it to the director and see if we can get you an audition. I didn't even know what an audition was. But I went along, did a reading, sang a song, and they gave me the part. And that was the start of my acting career. I did a lot of plays, did a lot of touring, and then got into TV because our theatre company was asked to come up with an idea for a comedy series. And that was the birth of our comedy series, No Problem, which was one of the first shows that ever showed on Channel 4 when Channel 4 first started. So that was my acting career. And then soon after that, I started my family. And in the meantime, I had 3 children, and in the meantime, I did some recording with a band called Beats International. And I'm telling you this story because it leads on to the next story. So I did this track with Beats International, and we did a few interviews, and one of the interviews was on a program called The Box, which was shown all around the world. I'd also recorded an album for another producer. I've worked with several producers. I'd recorded another album for another producer and re-recorded Loving You in the early 80s, mid-80s. No, it wasn't. It wasn't the mid-80s. It was the 90s. Oh my God, my time thing. Yeah, it was the 90s. Anyway, I got a call from Japan, from Sony Japan, and they were saying that they were looking for Janet Kay. And I said, well, how on earth did you get my number? They said, well, we got your number through your theatre company. And we found out who your theatre company was through an interview that you'd done on The Box. So I thought, okay, fate. So they said, well, we wanted to speak to you because your track, Loving You, is at the top of the charts in Japan. I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't even know that this track had been released in Japan, because this producer hadn't informed me that he'd sent it abroad. and it had got to the top of the charts, and no one knew, they didn't know where to find me. So they sent me a picture of the album, and they put the album together, put the album cover together and everything, but they didn't know who I was. So the album cover has got some other girl's face on it, it's not even me. So they invited me to come to Japan to do a mini tour, which I did. It was unbelievably amazing. It was something I never thought I'd ever do, to go to an Asian country like that. I expected to see everybody in kimonos, but it wasn't that bad. But in those days, most people didn't speak English. So I remember the first show that I did, I saw a lot of white hankies, and I'm thinking, oh my God, everybody in here's got a cold. But after the show, it turned out that a lot of the girls, they were all crying. You know, especially when I did the last song of the night, which was Loving You, they were all crying, and it's like, it showed me that music, the language, there's no language barrier when it comes to music, because they understood the sentiment of the music. From there, I was signed to Sony Music in Japan, and I had a long-standing, you know, relationship with them for, I think, about 15 years, and I did 5 or 6 albums with them. So I had a fantastic career in Japan. That was my first ever recording contract that I have had, because I've never had one. I've never had a recording contract over here. Can you believe it? In the UK. But anyway, so Loving You for me, it did change my life, because my previous records and stuff that I'd written, you know, I didn't have any access to my own music, and so being able to earn some money at last from my music, I was able to access the copyrights back. I got the copyrights of my music back that I did in the 70s and the 80s. So now I'm able to sell my own music, and it doesn't have to go through anybody else. So that's what the Sony connection did for me. It enabled me to get to own my stuff, which is very important for an artist.
Yep.
So yeah.
Janet, thank you for sharing those amazing stories.
Thank you.
Jenny came big in Japan. Why don't we hear the song that's changed your life twice?
Okay.
Play the music. Thank you.
La